So it is no secret that coming out of the 2 year time skip, something about One Piece had changed. Something about One Piece was different. But what exactly is different about One Piece compared to the pre-time skip? That right there, folks, is the $1 million question that I'm gonna do my absolute best to answer fully. To put it bluntly, One Piece is less fun now, and I don't mean this in a derogatory manner, nor am I saying that the story is boring, as that is far from the case. When I say less fun, I basically mean more serious. This isn't a bad thing at all, since it's a natural progression of any story ever. As the climax draws near and the end within the sight, it's only logical for the stakes to rise. Things become more intense as plotlines set into motion years ago are in the process of being wrapped up. Sometimes this changing tone can be quite jarring and almost disconnected from the rest of the series. In the case of One Piece, I don't find this shift to be particularly jarring, as Oda knows how to up the ante without doing any detriment to the overall quality of this series. That being said, just because something isn't bad or negative doesn't mean that it can't be acknowledged. One Piece is still the same whimsical romantic tale we've come to love, but following the 2 year time skip, the focus shifted from our beloved group of pirates to the One Piece world as a whole. It's genius, really. By dedicating the first half of the story entirely to fleshing out the Straw Hat Pirates, solidifying the bonds and might of this crew, and occasionally adding in those small seeds of a far bigger world, once the second half of the story rolled around, the Straw Hats are no longer a motley crew going wherever the wind leads them. They are the winds blowing over the very landscape of this massive realm, and their every action has significant repercussions. We could afford to leisurely have fun on an island before the time skip without there being some massive looming threat resting on our chest like an albatross, because things were different back then. At this point in the story, Luffy and the Straw Hat Pirates are an Emperor's crew now. They are the big dogs they used to have to try and escape from. Pre-time skip One Piece is a lot like your early adult years. You go into the world having this sort of bright-eyed optimism with blissful ignorance and a pocket full of dreams. Man, the world is yours for the taking. Post-time skip One Piece is basically your mid-20s. By now, you have experienced a great deal of what the real world has to offer, both good and bad. You've still got the same dreams and goals that you had years ago, but what you came to painfully realize is that the world we live in is much more than what you think. Oda captures this aspect of growing up quite perfectly, as the first arc of the second half of One Piece, the Fishman Island arc, offers us a lot of insight into what the future of the story will look like going forward. It is in this arc where we come to learn of the brutal history of the Fishmen. You see the ugly sides of humanity and fishmen alike. We also see the kindness of both parties as well. It is in the Fishman Island arc where we are first introduced to Joy Boy and his letter of apology to the Fishmen. Fishman Island is an arc that gets a lot of flack for being several notches below Marineford in terms of scale and intensity, but this arc is absolutely necessary. It serves as a means for a completely different side of the narrative to begin to unfold. The focus of the story isn't the only thing that has changed in One Piece, however. Two other major components that I want to touch on are the pacing and general art direction of the manga. When you ask the average person why they have not or will not pick up One Piece, the usual answer is some variant of
"It's too long,"
which I disagree with. In fact, I say that One Piece isn't long enough, but objectively speaking, One Piece is pretty damn long. If you look at the pre-time skip and post-time skip in isolation, there is a glaring difference in how the story is being paced. Let's take a look at the three longest arcs pre-time skip. The Arabasta arc, which sits at 63 chapters, Skypiea clocking in at 66 chapters, and Enies Lobby with 56 manga chapters. Altogether, these three arcs make up 185 of the 597 chapters that comprises the pre-time skip half of One Piece. Compare that to the longest three arcs post-time skip, Wano at 150 chapters, Dressrosa at 102 chapters, and Whole Cake Island at 78 chapters. These three behemoths alone total a staggering 330 of the 483 currently released chapters of the second half of One Piece. As this series has gotten longer, the world has gotten bigger, meaning more characters, more side plots, and a grander story. The change in One Piece's pacing is not one that is entirely self-induced on Oda's part. The guy is knocking on the door of 50. This of course means more breaks and such to remain healthy. Nobody deserves a relaxed schedule more than Oda. We can't ignore how these breaks can disrupt a lot of that week-to-week hype though. And there was also a whole pandemic. That led to Shonen Jump as a collective taking on a reduced schedule to accommodate safety measures. An arc like Wano that normally would have lasted 3 years had an entire year tacked onto it by circumstances far outside of any of our control. Oda is an author that takes his time to edge you. That climax is coming, you know it is, but you also know that Oda is going to take his sweet time getting there. What ends up happening is we, the readers, spend literal years with the story at a standstill essentially. We had to beat Kaido and Big Mom, there was nowhere around it. That's the only way the narrative can advance. The raid on Onigashima began with chapter 974 and concluded with chapter 1050. That's a little over 2 years of fighting and all of us wondering how were two Emperors of the Sea going to be defeated in this battle. Within those 2 years, we're treated to the best content One Piece had ever produced, so regardless of how much time it might have taken, it was more than worth it in the end. We are in the eye of the storm. Things will only continue to get bigger and crazier as the series progresses to its conclusion. That leads me to the next component, the art direction. One Piece's art is gorgeous and it's honestly one of my favorite styles in all of manga. Pre-timeskip specifically is where it really shines. The art has plenty of room to breathe. The black and white composition beautifully captures the vastness Oda has put to paper. One man's imagination isn't limited by the confines of the medium, but rather it takes full advantage of these limitations. Every image pops and catches your eye. You can't help but to stop and take in what you're looking at. It is a level of detail and grace that I've seldom seen in all my days of reading manga. Every panel flows seamlessly to the next and the action is pretty easy to follow. That was until recent years. In this regard, it's just another factor of Oda simply aging. A 48-year-old Oda can't put out the same level of quality that he did when he was 28. It is physically impossible. He has been writing and drawing this story longer than I've existed. It's expected of there to be some level of deterioration. For the record, One Piece still has really great art and it hasn't suffered too significantly over time. There are times I find myself bewildered with how a page is structured or some things are a little difficult to make out here and there. When was the last time we had a proper double spread, by the way? One single image taking up 2 full pages. You want to know the answer to that? It's been 8 years. The last double page spread we got was at the end of Dressrosa. This is by far the biggest travesty since Oda has drawn fantastic double spreads in the past. Even then, it's inconsequential in the grand scheme of things since the art of this incredible story remains a sight to behold to this day. So yes, One Piece has changed, but One Piece had to change. When you have a story this big, when you have a story this gargantuan, when you have a story this long, the series has to change in some capacity to both accommodate the needs of this huge story and to accommodate the man himself, the man behind it all, Eiichiro Oda. For if he's not maintained, if he does not remain healthy, then well, there is no more One Piece. And if there's no more One Piece, then that's not good for anybody. Now, whether or not these changes are good or these changes are bad, that comes entirely up to you, the individual. I myself cannot determine what's acceptable for you because what I find acceptable may not be acceptable for you, and that is 100% understandable. That is the beautiful thing about fiction. We are free to interpret and feel however we want about the many pieces of fiction out there for us to explore. There is no objectivity or right or wrong when it comes to how one person feels about a story. So I can only tell you this. Regardless of how you feel One Piece has changed, one thing is absolutely certain. We are witnessing one of the greatest pieces of fiction to ever be told in our lifetimes, and that is to be grateful for. It's okay to have your personal grievances with Oda and how he might be writing or drawing the story. Lord knows I have my own, but it's important that we all try to enjoy this wonderful story in some capacity, because no matter how you slice it, any piece of media out there is going to be flawed in some way, shape, or form. What's important is how you enjoy the story. What's important is what this story means to you. One Piece is a once-in-a-lifetime phenomenon, so once it's over, that's it. It's highly unlikely that we see another story told like this in our lifetime. So let's try to enjoy what's still here.